because their mindset has affected them so much that they're not thinking about what they're putting in their body. And that's the danger of not getting your mindset under control, is it just starts to really affect every area.
In your new book, you talk a lot about authenticity. Why is authenticity so important right now? Why is it such a big part of our success?
Authenticity is the type of thing that we have to go back to over and over again. Whether it's how we show up at an event, it's how we show up in our personal life, it's how we show up in our business life. And when we aren't being authentic, and that term gets thrown around a lot these days, like everyone's like, be yourself, while they're like in a bikini hanging over a cliff and taking a selfie, right? Like, I don't know if that's authenticity. That seems like I want to get some likes. But figuring out authentically for yourself what it means to be authentic, because otherwise we end up with a lifestyle or a life that's incongruent with who we are, and it causes a lot of stress.
Yeah. That word itself, I mean, we were just talking about this before the show. Marketers tend to screw everything up, and taking a true principle like authenticity and turning it into a tactic.
Right.
I'm being real. But
which makes it confusing.
Yeah, right. For people, yeah.
For people, yeah. It's really confusing.
Well, this leads into the question, how do we actually tap into our authenticity? Why is it so difficult today to be ourselves?
Well, I think the more we're on social media, the harder it is to be ourselves. So, and I'm someone who struggled with being authentic for many years. I struggled because I grew up playing basketball. I grew up in a family. I'm the shortest male out of all the men. I'm 6'5". My dad's 6'7". My mom's 6'8". My sister's 6'1". So it was a basketball family. And I grew up, and we all grow up in these families, and we look around us, and because they played basketball, I thought, oh, I love basketball. I ended up being pretty good at it. Went to this high school called Mater Dei, where I was, captain of the basketball team. I went with the homecoming queen. I was popular, but I was kind of miserable inside. I was doing all those things that I thought we do to be accepted.
Yeah.
The truth for me at the time was I am gay, but at the time I didn't know what it was. I really didn't know what it was because there was no social media. And the only examples of that was RuPaul on TV, which I love RuPaul, but I can't relate. Like, fun, entertaining. And then there was a guy on the show, The Real World, named Pedro, and he ended up dying of HIV. And there's no poor me in this. It's just I literally didn't know what it was. And when you don't know what's going on with you and you feel shame, you try really hard to be accepted by others, to people please, to get others to love you for accolades. And because of that, I ended up using a lot of drugs, and I ended up going to therapy at a very young age because my parents were like, what is going on with Michael? And, and part of the reason I've been so passionate about authenticity for almost 20 years is because I know what it's like to live an inauthentic life. And I love to help people find their truth of who they are. And, being gay is one of 10,000 descriptions of who I am, but it causes a lot of pain and suffering when who we are, we just don't talk about and we don't express and we stuff it. And so it's for all of us, we constantly have to go back to like, who am I? Who am I? Because sometimes who we think we are is who our parents said we were. Then later in life, we're like, my mom was like this, my dad was like this. That's not who I am, right? But for me, I find a helpful tool is if we start to write out the descriptions of who we are when we feel free. And, I'm funny, I'm charismatic, I'm fearless, whatever it is. And then for me, when I work with people, we create a character. Mine is a wizard. It's actually, I have a wizard up my arm on my sleeve. You've been to my house. I got wizards all over my house. And it's a reminder that like when I'm being authentic, I feel like I'm a wizard in my own life. And I can bring the wizard into different situations instead of bringing this feeling of like anxiety or not being accepted. And yeah, man,
which is another character.
And that I have everyone create what I call their anti-self.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, my anti-self is a male witch because I don't remember male witches having friends. Right. You know, you don't see
and
them.
By the way, the short term for male witch is a Mitch.
Is it?
Yeah, Mitches. I'm just making that up.
No, but I dig it. I mean, mine was called Angelos, which is the Greek god of provocation, where basically I isolate, I complain about the world, I look at champagne problems, I don't do anything about it. And when you can add a little bit of humor to that part of us that struggles, and I've been doing this for years. I mean, I've been doing it with business executives, celebrities. You know, I remember one entertainer I worked with didn't want to like do any deals, and we basically created a squirrel named Ralph. And Ralph went into every meeting and they ended up getting a VMA, you know, just by making a decision to be authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so powerful, you know, and I know some of the people you work with as well, and they just rave about you. This is what I really love about your work, and how you translated that over into a book is really remarkable.
Thank you.
Which is, a lot of people are in the business unknowingly of just knowing stuff. Like they're picking up all these little insights from self-help. They're getting inspired, but what are you going to do with it?
Right.
And so you get people taking action within the book. And I love that, is being able to basically dictate what are the qualities that are my best self, and give that person a name, create a character around that, and know that the other qualities that are not so worthy of you,
right,
and giving that a name and a character. And it's just like, oh, there goes that Mitch again.
Yep.
You know, and I'm being a little Mitch right now.
Exactly.
And you can start to even create humor and to see it when it's happening, and it starts to break the tension, because that's part of the issues in our life. And I want to ask you about this.
Yeah.
I think that when tough times are happening, we're so invested in it. We get so caught up in the rapture of the thing, and we're not able to step back and to see a bigger picture. And oftentimes the problem isn't remotely as big as we make it out to be.
Yeah, it's like an ant. What do they say? An ant hill becomes a volcano. You know, what was it, ant hill or an ant farm? You know, where they're all coming out suddenly. It's, you know, exploding. Yeah, but it's interesting how we focus on the things that don't matter to us a year from now,
or even next week,
or even at the end of the day.
Right. True.
Yeah, we create such intensity, you know, around things that really don't matter. And life is short. You know, the saying is true. A lot of these sayings are sayings because they make sense.
Right.
And the things that bother us today, unless it's really around like our health, you know, if we're here on this earth and we're wanting to have a great experience, you know, yes, it's important to have the mindset connect to the health. But if someone isn't focusing on their health, they're going to have more depression. They're going to have more anxiety. They're going to have more health issues. You know, one of the businesses that I founded over 15 years ago is called CAST Centers. It's a treatment center. We're an outpatient. So we deal with people, half our population's like depression, anxiety, co-occurring disorders. The other half is alcoholism and drug addiction. I can tell you that 99% of the clients, when they enter into our outpatient, have absolutely terrible health. They, because their mindset has affected them so much that they're not thinking about what they're putting in their body. You know, and that's the danger of not getting your mindset under control, is it just starts to really affect every area.
That's shocking. I mean, this is anecdotal evidence, but very real and tangible. You're saying like over 90% of folks.
At least. I mean, I can't think of anyone, unless someone was like, you know, but even then, like, I'm thinking an example would be someone who's like a bodybuilder. But even then, it's an extreme. They're going to an extreme. They're taking opiates or pain, whatever, right? I can't think of anyone, not to say they don't look okay. Yeah. But if we were to really do an analysis of when are you eating, what are you eating, they're not going to the doctor, because when somebody's depressed, they're the priority list really changes.
Right.
You know, I don't know any depressed people that are really that concerned about what they're putting in their body.
You said this earlier. Some of the terms that we say really are real. I often point to the fact people don't do well because they don't feel well.
Right.
And these things feed into each other. So if we're talking about depression, anxiety, alcohol abuse, whatever the case might be, these are all faculties that can destroy our health. But poor health leads more into those, and of course, feeling like it can be like a snowball effect, a vicious circle.
I spoke to someone 2 days ago, successful guy. He said, I just feel miserable. Like I just feel off. And I feel lost. He's like, I'm making more money than ever. I have a kid on the way. I should be grateful for everything. And I said to him, when was the last time you worked out? He goes, well, I was doing it 5 days a week. I said, well, when was that? He goes, before COVID. I go, so in 18 months, you haven't worked out once? He goes, no. I go, how's your food? He goes, terrible. And I'm like, all right, so you think that you're going to love life if you're not taking care of your health. Like and I really believe if this guy, sometimes the solution isn't going to talk therapy. It isn't hiring me as a coach. It's not coming to our outpatient. It's literally get your ass in the gym, go for a walk, start to sweat, and eat healthier. It's that simple for some.
It's true. And for me, it just goes back to really simple principles that, you know, the mind, the brain that he's having these thoughts contained in, it's made from food.
Right.
You know, so what are you making your container out of? You know, and the same thing with our movement practices. Your DNA expects you to move. If you're not moving, all kinds of programs are going to start turning on, basically to keep us alive, but put us on sleep mode in a sense.
Right.
You know, down regulating everything. We need movement to thrive. These are basic things.
We do.
So I love that you, again, incorporate those things, but you also live by example. I think recently, you recently started doing jujitsu?
I do. So I do jujitsu 4 days a week. So during COVID, I realized that I miss community. Like I'm gay, but I don't feel like I'm a part of the gay community, right? Like I don't even know what that means these days. You know, like everyone speaks on behalf of communities. I'm like, what the hell are you guys even? Who are you speaking for, right? I love sport. I like to be athletic, and I thought, what is a way to kind of, you know, hit two birds with one stone? And I was like, if I can create a community of people that are kind of cool to be around, like I like them, and I can also exercise. And so I had tried jiu-jitsu through the years. I did it once every 6 months to a year, and I would learn. And jiu-jitsu is basically a martial arts. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is you wear what's called a gi. They're robes, and you put a belt around it, and essentially you roll, they call it, with another person. And it ends either by time running out, or you have to tap because you're getting your arm broken or leg, you know, knee dislocated or choked out.
So fun.
I love it. Okay, so and I love it. By the way, there's no homoeroticism in this for me. Like I just want to put that out there. I've never because sometimes people have said to me, they're like, "Oh, I bet you do." I'm like, "Trust me, dude. I'm trying to survive." Like I feel like I'm gonna get like pass out or something. But what it's done for me, I have this amazing professor, Professor Cabrina, and when I started training with him, it's just awesome. You know, it opens your hips. It makes you breathe. I love sports where you can't think about anything else. Yeah. You're so in the moment,
right.
like with hot yoga. And so I'm actually entering a tournament in November, jiu-jitsu tournament.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I'll be in the ultra heavyweight division. It's been a game changer for me. And I think after COVID, for a lot of people, I've found it's figuring out how do you create a community of people that also you like to do exercise with. I find that's really helpful.
Yeah.
You know,
that's so great. And this also speaks to over the years, because you've done a lot of stuff. You've tried different, you know, activities, sports, experiences, travel, but there's always more.
Yeah.
And you proactively decided, let me put myself in this probably an uncomfortable position, like literally.
Right.
And challenging yourself. And I could see you kind of light up and talking about it.
Yeah.
And we all can tap into that, but we have to give ourselves permission to try new things.
We have to try new things. And it's really easy to get our brains to be like, I don't like that. But it's like I've heard some people be like, I don't like therapy. And I'm like, well, who was your therapist? It's like, I don't like my trainer. Well, who is your trainer? Like, how do you know you don't like something after one or two times? You know, especially when it's someone else teaching us. I'm a learner. You know, I like to learn. So if I can be in a setting, and even when I had you on my podcast, it's like I get to learn. When I can be a student, I'm thrilled. Because in other aspects of life, I feel like I'm viewed as like a teacher of things, you know, especially when I'm on Dr. Phil, it's like I'm that role. So it feels really good to like be a student.
You just gave a huge secret to some of the greatest teachers and coaches in the world. They're major students, you know, really lifetime students. I am obsessively, I'm just curious. I just want to learn. I want to explore. But also this goes back to, I don't want to just know stuff. I want to do stuff.
Right.
And put in action, see what happens.
Right.
Get that real world feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this leads into your new book.
Right.
And you titled it One Decision. What drove you to, what was the decision for you to call it One Decision?
Well, you know, my first book that came out was called Best Self, which helps people find out who they are authentically and creating that part of you and looking at your whole life and figuring out, how do I be authentic in every aspect of my life, from my personal to my spiritual to my health, you know, because we don't sit back and screen our lives until we're in a crisis often. And so my style of writing is very much like working with me as a coach, where the person's writing in the book and underlining and answering questions. It's like, how can I give someone a coaching experience? And with One Decision, I realized that everything comes down to one decision. Like every aspect of our life comes down to one decision. And we're just one decision away from making a change. And sometimes they are big decisions, but often they're really just small little one decisions that have a huge impact in our life for the better. So the intention of the book is to help people start to just make one decisions in their life that ultimately can lead them to make better decisions for themselves.
Right off the bat, that's a powerful insight, because we're just one decision away, truly, from changing our lives. Now, the decision is always there and possible, but what is it? Why can't we get ourselves to the place where we actually make that decision? What do we need to do to get ourselves to that place?
Yeah, so there's two things. One is figuring out, okay, what is causing us the most stress? Or, you know, sometimes it's helpful to figure out what is giving us the most anxiety. I've found working with people that we often think something is bothering us, but it's not actually that thing. You know, like we may think, God, I'm really stressed because I need to make more money. But what someone's actually stressed about is security, safety. It's deeper than what our brains are saying. And sometimes we can still create that security and safety so we feel different, and ultimately we'll make more money. But when we're looking at that thing outside of ourselves, so the first part is changing our mindset around what it is that we're wanting to change. Like I said, I do a lot of assessments in my work. So I really want to figure out, like, very quickly what is working, because some people, and that's a great thing, right? Like everyone has areas of their life that are working tremendously, and we don't take time to appreciate those areas. We don't go, well, I'm killing it in this arena. Like I feel good. And so I like to kind of help people just add a number to these different areas. And then once we figure out that lowest number, let's say it's your finances or your health or whatever, then I ask, well, how motivated are you to change it? Because if you're not motivated to change it, then let's not focus on that. Let's focus on something else. And so I do another test that's kind of like, all right, well, let's figure out your motivation. And then we take a look at how are we currently viewing that problem. Because often when we struggle, I created what's called the force. I love acronyms. I know you do too. The force is when the negative force is when we're fortune telling. You know, we often fortune tell because we think we're protecting ourselves.
So the force acronym is designating a negative force in our lives.
Correct.
Okay, so we got F.
So when so we have F, which is fortune telling, and the force is the mindset that drives us to be able to not get into a solution. So O would be overgeneralizing. This is where like racism exists. This is where sexism exists. This is where I'm not good enough exists, or I tried that once before, so it can't happen. Right. So overgeneralizing gets in the way. Rigidity, which is also known as right fighting, that really blocks us from learning and figuring out new ways that we can approach a situation. We'll sometimes see this in companies where people need to be right and they're not team players.
And not just in companies, in relationships.
Correct.
As well.
For sure. Especially with people who are parenting.
Ooh,
you see that a lot.
Yeah. And also, so that would be rigidity, like having tunnel vision, basically, not being able to see all the options.
Correct. It's like the need for control, the need to be right. It's like that person that like you get together with and you're both unsure, but they go home and Google it and send you a text to prove they're right. Even though you don't really care.
Who are you hanging out with, Mike?
That's my dad. Okay. My dad was a right fighter. I love my dad to pieces, but like, those people, there's a lot of these people, trust me. And then C is confused purpose. That's when we're just confused or lost in life. We're just like, why am I going to do that? Like you're just stuck. And E is emotional reasoning, which is basically like the same feelings aren't facts. Because I see a lot of people going, I feel this way, therefore it's the truth. Well, just because you feel that way, if every time we were accurate just upon the way we feel, if I thought just the way I feel, then I'd still be addicted to drugs. I mean, it's like, it doesn't work. And that's where a victim mindset comes in. That's where people typically, you hurt my feelings. And that type of stuff just doesn't allow us to feel empowered. So those are obstacles.
Yeah.
So when we get into the opportunities, that's the positive force. And from my experience, people, and it's hard to kind of articulate without like guiding someone through an exercise around it. But really what I've found is if we can get someone from one of those negative forces to a positive force, then they can make one decision from that point of view. So like instead of fortune telling, they're fact finding. So I'll find that people will fortune tell, oh, they'll never hire me. And I'll say, well, let's look at the facts. Do you think they've ever hired someone who hasn't completed college? Oh, so you think only successful people completed like college? Like get into the facts around it. Instead of overgeneralizing, we get into objective thinking. Mm-hmm. How are we looking at this person, place, or thing that is objective, using critical thinking? Instead of being having rigidity, we begin to relaxed. Relaxed is more casual, like we were talking about a little while ago, like it doesn't matter. We're holding on to it like it's so important when really we can be chill about it. The C is having clarified purpose. So, and I found this so helpful. It's like when we get confused, especially now that a lot of people are reconnecting after COVID, or they may go to a dinner and they're confused, like, why am I here? Like, it's because we haven't clarified our purpose. We're there to show up for a friend. It's not about us. We're there because we're going to network. So once we get into that clarifying our purpose, we don't isolate. We show up. We get curious. And then instead of emotional reasoning, it's evidence-based thinking, which is really getting into the evidence. So that's just like a quick hack that we go through in one decision. Because I've found that the reason why people can't get into an opportunity mindset is they're stuck in this negative force.
I love that so much. It's like the dark side of the force.
You got it. Yeah.
Wow, this is so good, man. And what really jumped out to me of all of those is the emotional reasoning. I think that's a huge player in our lives. And also from that, emotional decision making.
Right.
So making decisions based off of our emotions. And
that's why we say sleep on it.
Right. Sleep smarter on it.
Sleep smarter on it, right?
Right. That's
don't
powerful.
React. Don't be impulsive because that's out of emotion.
Yeah. There's a statement to never make a long-term decision on a temporary emotion. So having a little bit more resolve. But within that, I love the other side of it, which is evidence-based thinking.
Right.
And we're big proponents of that here. And also, but the emotion isn't bad. That's the thing too. And what I love about your work as well, but it's like using it intelligently. So we can take this evidence-based thinking and imbue it with emotion.
Yeah, I think, and there's different types. Obviously, there's a huge range of emotions and everyone is different. But I think if we're viewing something where it's causing us to suffer, then we should look at the evidence and make sure it's okay for us to suffer. That it's like that level of struggle that, you know, I really like to help people get out of, because once we, like you said, once we get into the evidence, it feels better.
Yeah.
You just naturally feel better just upon looking at the problem differently.
So good. So good. So I want to ask you about this within one decision, within that framework of, again, the decision is always present. You know, when I made the decision to improve my health, for example, the decision was always there. It just took me time to get to the place where I made the decision, because it literally, my life changed the moment I stopped blaming, you know, asking why me, why won't somebody help me, to asking a different question. I asked, what can I do to get healthy? What can I do to feel better? And in that moment, my life changed. Now that was followed by action, of course, but I want to talk about this because you also have the 4 O's. And it starts off with the obstacle. So can we go through that?
Sure. This is just another quick tool hack is, and I think in self-help, or the genre I'm in, I'm always helping people get out of a problem or an obstacle, because, you know, usually I find that I'm trying to help someone overcome a way that they're looking at something. So first it's figuring out what the obstacle is. Like, give me an obstacle.
Okay, so right now a lot of folks are dealing with issues with the job market. A lot of folks lost their jobs over the presence of COVID and kind of taking over people's lives. A lot of folks had to pivot and do new things, but right now there's still millions of people who are unemployed. Specifically, the folks who had to shut their doors to their businesses permanently. You know, my wife and I just went out because stuff is sort of opened up.
Right, sort of.
And we went to a restaurant, and right across was, I'd say, our favorite restaurant, and it's closed down permanently. It's been here operating for many, many years, but they were forced to shut their doors. And I think about the family who runs that business. What can they do to recover they've lost something they've really invested so much of their life into.
Yeah.
And I know that's a story for a lot of people.
Well, and I think it also, from my experience working with a lot of people who've had some businesses closed down, some have said to me it was a blessing, and it allowed them to focus on other things, like they felt ball and chained to that specific business. However, when somebody really has to pivot and change their career, you know, the mindset, right? It's not to say it doesn't suck, and it's not to say it doesn't feel fair. It's not taken away from all of that. It's a matter of, what is the opportunity today that could change everything? And when somebody is really stressed out around money, it filters into every area of their life. So if somebody's stressed out about money, then the opportunity would be, well, what are some new ways to make money? What have you always wanted to do that you couldn't do before? Could you consult? Could you advise? Could you take that wisdom and experience and bring it to another arena? Could you write a book? Could you speak? Could you call that school down the street that your kids go to and share that wisdom? Can you call that business? Like, could you believe in yourself now that you're capable of doing it? Could you find a new business partner? Do you have an idea? You know, like, all those are opportunities. And as soon as we're able to see the opportunities, we get inspired and we can start to make some changes. The mindset of, like, that sucks, it's all over, it's impossible to create new opportunities.
You're already limiting yourself right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So the obstacle, we have the obstacle, then we have the opportunity that presents itself, which the truth is, even as I'm hearing you, you're just sharing some of the opportunities.
Some of the opportunities.
You can go on and on and on.
And that's everyone authentically has their own opportunities. So when we make one decision, that's the third part, from viewing it as an obstacle. If we make one decision when we feel like this sucks, what decision do we make?
I can't do anything about it.
Can't do anything about it. We start getting into the negative force. Things aren't going to change. I put too much time in. When we view it as an opportunity, the one decision we make is inspired. We're calling people. We're hustling. We're like, I sometimes say to myself, I'm like a cockroach. You can't get rid of me. We've just begun. It's like you make decisions viewing them as an opportunity. And the last O, it's called the 4 O's: obstacle, opportunity, one decision, and then outcome. So the outcome, when we're being authentic and making a decision from viewing it as an opportunity, is we can let go of the outcome. When we make one decision from viewing it as an obstacle, that's when we start to go, God, I got to clean that up again, or I shouldn't have said that, or God, I didn't feel good about it. We start feeling insecure, and we're not making decisions that better our life. So it's as simple as viewing it differently and making decisions from that mindset is what ultimately leads us to a more authentic, better life.
I think there's such a deep level of truth in what you're sharing, and I know that everybody's had these experiences, that the obstacle turned into something of value for them in their lives. If we look back on some of the toughest things we've gone through and the character traits that came from it, or the directions that shifted us to in our lives, and how it kind of moved us forward. And I think that the only thing that can keep us feeling stagnant is when we don't learn from the obstacle, when we don't get something from it because we're choosing not to.
We're choosing not to.
Yeah.
We're choosing not to.
I want to circle back and ask you about authenticity again, because I think it makes it easier to do this process when you are feeling in your power. You're feeling authentic, being authentic to who you really are. Right now, I feel that we're experiencing an epidemic of inauthenticity, right? Because we're exposed to how we evolved is we might compare ourselves to maybe a few people in our tribe or a village. Now you can compare yourself to hundreds of people a day, or thousands even a day. Like, we're just not wired up for all of that comparison. And so how is that really our lives right now? How is our constant state of comparison pulling away from our authenticity?
Well, it definitely is. And that's why it's so important to build our community and people who love and accept us for who we are, and looking towards those people, getting our mindset to look at those relationships. Social media is not authentic, and if you want to go the direction of, I'm just going to say everything, you sometimes can go the route of being angry. And that's not really who you are. It's like, who are you fighting? Strangers, ghosts, right? So, I think it's just so important that we express ourselves the most authentic way, but also not give other people parts of ourselves that maybe they don't deserve. And also, I find it so interesting. In my own industry of coaches, a lot of these coaches buy their followers, they buy their engagement, and they position themselves a certain type of way, but yet they're preaching authenticity. And it's like, it's sometimes for my own brain, right? Like, I struggle with it at times. Like, I struggle with, sometimes, well, why are they getting that? But then I have to go, man, you got a great life, and start to get into a lot of gratitude, because otherwise it's like a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And the more I've found, and you do this, you trailblaze, you march to your own beat. You're not someone that copies other people. I feel like you're even someone who's like, I want to make sure I don't ever be seen as copying anyone else. And you probably put a lot of thought behind things to make sure of that, right?
I make my own model.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's intentional. Absolutely. Yeah. And also I'm going about this intentionally for other people to be more confident about who they are.
Right.
I'm changing the framework of what a scientist looks like, what a healthcare practitioner looks like, what they sound like.
I'm with you. I'm changing the way of what a life coach can sound like.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And look like and vibe like. Yeah. I get all the time people going like, well, that doesn't sound very professional. And it's the best compliment ever. Because I'm not looking for them to think I'm the best professional ever. Or I think like mental health and healthcare in general, Like we all struggle with mental health. We're all trying to do the best we can. And the guy in like just being in a suit in an office that's the old model, you know? And I think really it's about everyone has the opportunity to express themselves just like we are trying to do day to day. Anyone can do that day to day. And they're enough. And as long as we don't care, meaning like anyone, what other people think, we're good. As soon as we start deeply caring, we struggle. And so that's why it's so important to surround ourselves with people who love us, who support us. And that sounds cliche, but I'm telling you, during COVID, Zoom is not the same. You know, like my neighbor texted me, moved to New York. He wanted to Zoom and check in. I said, I'm not doing Zoom. Like, I'm past that now. I want to connect with people. Yeah. You know, I want to feel the vibe of people. You know,
we don't live in. This is not a movie. Like we see these futuristic movies where, you know, it's that kind of communication. It's you know, virtual.
Right.
But humans, we evolve. We're talking about billions of years here getting to this point of community and working together.
Right.
And suddenly, literally within the last couple of decades, it's just been this huge fracture of what that looks like. And prior to the pandemic and all the shutdowns, one of the former Surgeon Generals of the United States, their publicist reached out, you know, sent me their work, and they were coming forward sharing that loneliness is the number one health problem in our country. It's the foundation for so many other issues. And I went and dug around and looked at the data, and it was very compelling, to say the least. And so we're living in a culture where we're getting more and more separated. And so with you, what you're saying is so simple, but are we doing it? Which is pay more attention and cultivate real relationships that keep you supported.
Yeah, Peloton
uplifted.
is not in I know people love Peloton. I have a Peloton bike, although I'm over it now, because it's not community. It's not real. It's a facade, and they make you feel like you're a part of this thing that's so exciting to get. You're not. You're literally punching in on a computer, and like my screen name's Vita Maria, which is the name of my dog. And it's like, I'm not going to lunch with anyone. I'm basically spinning with an instructor. But they make it seem, see, the thing is a lot of these marketing campaigns, same thing with telehealth. There's a lot of things going on to make you feel like, oh, I should feel really good. I'm a part of this. We're not. It's marketing. And we sit back and we look at it, and then we start to feel really lonely. Yeah, you're going to feel lonely. If you're riding a bike 5 days a week with a computer screen, yeah, you're going to feel lonely. That's not connecting. That's not. And I know people will be, I love that's great. But for a lot of people, it's not enough. For me, it's not enough. Yeah. You know, and COVID, especially with marketing, has made it seem like we're all able to be so connected, and we're not. Yeah. You know, and I think I get like, you know, I've like a few things where like I get reactive, and you know, that's something. I also get reactive with pharmaceutical company commercials, and I know you're passionate about that too. And I work in mental health, so they're always coming around trying to get this medicine, this medicine, this medicine. And it's just like,
ask your doctor.
Right.
That's not how it's supposed to work.
And by the way, like doctors for mental health, even though they can prescribe medication, I think it's something like, I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it's like they take 2 or 3 courses on the brain.
If that.
Yeah. If that. But it's not like but they can prescribe medication for the brain.
Yeah. And they're not actually looking at the organ that they're treating.
No.
That's the biggest issue.
And the amount of clients that we get at CAS centers where the primary doctor put them on cocktails and medications where we're like,
based on a conversation.
Yeah, and we're like, why are they on Xanax? Because benzos, for example, a lot of people have ended up on benzos during COVID. Benzos are like Valium, Xanax, and they're the most brutal withdrawal of any drug, period. Like, because it can last for months. They're slow acting in terms of like when they hit your blood and how it works with time. And you can literally, and every drug, what's interesting, especially with, is you get the opposite effect when you stop taking it. So you get heightened effect. So let's say you're on a medication to stop anxiety. When you stop the medication, your anxiety is going to go through the roof because your system is built up to protect that anxiety. And so your tolerance goes up. And so by the time you get off of it, it is brutal. Like if it was at a 4, it's now at an 8. And so it's like some of these medications are tricky because unless you're committed to being on them for a long, long time, I mean, you can't work a full-time job and go through like getting off Xanax. And I'm talking, these are slow doses. These aren't like, someone's taking a bunch of Xanny bars. It's in it over time. So anyways, I just got triggered around community and like,
hey, this is, you're really speaking my language because, if we're really being honest about it, everything has its place. Drugs have their place. But what these are doing, these are masking symptoms. They're masking symptoms. They're not actually bringing a solution.
Right.
And that's the unfortunate thing. And if we're just being honest, in an acute situation, these are great places for medications. Mm-hmm. But for chronic issues, for things that people are really struggling with, if we're just going to hide the symptom, what are you actually doing? Your body is trying to express and give you feedback that something's wrong. So let's go ahead and silence that alarm and see what happens.
Right, because doctors today have become the modern day drug dealer. Like, they're the biggest prescribers of opiates that mimic when somebody's on heroin, right? Like, this just happens to be in a pill and you can get it for a copay. And not all doctors are like horrible. There's great people out there. It's just when you're dealing with vulnerable people in general, vulnerability comes from someone going, I don't know what to do. Tell me, help me, and that's why I get a little bit of a reaction to it. Like some of these coaching conferences, when like people get opened up for 2 to 3 days, they're feeling the richness of life. And then someone's like, and by the way, it's $50,000 a year to sign up for this program. I'm like, why don't you give them like a week? You know what I mean? Like let them go back in their life. But I guess that's not the business model. But same thing with doctors. When someone's coming in vulnerable, it's like they're not calling the spouse and the family system. Like there's a lot of dynamics with psychology. So it's not as simple as like,
here's a pill, unfortunately. And, having the opportunity to work in healthcare and have so many colleagues, unfortunately, and they'll share this with you, that the system is structured in such a way that many physicians, even though they love people, they're there to serve, they're trying to help people get better. It doesn't allow for that. Right. It's really treating people, it's volume. It's really operating in volume and not value or quality. And just to keep the whole big machine running. And I just shared recently that Johnson & Johnson closed in on a almost $30 billion lawsuit to settle their contributions to the opioid crisis. And right now their name is top of mind because they got a new drug that's, again, not FDA approved, actually. And just we're gonna wait and see what happens, And another one of their issues, the baby powder, they just closed in on about a $5 billion lawsuit on the baby powder.
Why would it happen with the baby powder?
You don't know about the baby powder and the cancer? Yeah.
What? No, I don't know about this baby powder.
So Johnson,
I don't have any babies.
They knowingly hid data coming from their own scientists, even, that this could potentially be a carcinogen. And they just kept it on the market for all those years. And again, it's not to say that value can't come from these organizations, but if they have a track record of criminal activity, felonies, death, and they get to keep running business as usual. That's the crazy part about it.
And I think what it comes down to in a lot of these is like education. Like they and granted, if you can afford it, some of these private schools, they're going to offer the most customized experience for kids, right? Like, and it's phenomenal. And I've spoken to some of these schools, and it's very, they're very prestigious. But really, it's the school of life, and how do you navigate all of this messaging? How do you navigate relationships? Like, we're never taught in school about mindset growing up. We're not taught about, here's how you improve your mindset. Here's how you view an obstacle and turn it into an opportunity. Here's what you do with a stress, right? Here's what you do when you don't feel enough. And I think those type of topics in schools as courses. I mean, who identified in schools what is considered a course? Okay, this is a course. Well, why wouldn't you have a mindset course? Like, why wouldn't you have a true health course. You're going to put food in your body every day. But there's no health. Why would that not be as important as trigonometry? Like, I can't tell you one thing. I mean, look, I did basic algebra, but like, imagine how many hours went into studying that could have been on like, here's how you regulate your sleep. And here's some tricks to get yourself to deal with anxiety. How cool would that be?
Yeah.
That's life.
These are real things we
life.
use in the real world every day.
Every day.
And I'm one of those guys. I took all of these math classes and advanced stuff. I don't even know why, really.
Because you're smart. You're very smart, and you probably were like excited and got into it.
Yeah.
And you probably like statistics and
yeah.
data.
I was just gonna say one of my last classes in college was business statistics.
So gnarly. I failed that class.
Yeah.
That is so hard.
I even remember my teacher, Professor Abdul. Shout out to Professor Abdul. But it's just like fascinating to me. But where does the translation of value in people's lives?
Right.
You know, because again, a tiny percentage of people might use that data. But I'm so grateful to have you here to say this, which is, and we can change it in our lifetime, where these classes are taught to children on basic principles of health and taking care of their body.
Right.
Basic principles of operating and understanding their own mind that they live with all the time, that's making decisions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, in my opinion, courses should be based upon what we deal with day to day in life and less about like stuff that isn't relevant, you know. And how cool would that be to be able to build up and grow people to be their true authentic selves and to be able to carry themselves. You know, it's the same thing with like kids can't help what families they grow up in. And, you know, the trauma that goes on in some households and what people are dealing with. Let's help people figure that out.
You know, as you're talking, this is reminding me why this doesn't exist, is that it doesn't fit into conformity. These things are anti-conformity when you teach people how to think, not what to think. And when you teach them, when you deprive them of learning about their bodies and how to feel good, that's pro conformity. And so this is how we get into a system where we have the medical system where we've got people who want to help others get trapped in a system where they're working for the drug industry, even if they didn't sign up for that.
Yeah.
You know, and just feeding into the problem, and the insurance companies and the government regulations, and all of it is feeding into the most powerful industry, and really even their legal system. Their lawyers are the most powerful people on the planet.
You don't want to mess with
if we're
them.
talking about the drug industry. And one other little fun fact that, you know, I was just shocked to see, but it wasn't an accident, because you mentioned the drug commercials.
Yeah.
They come on television. Pharmaceutical companies provide billions of dollars every year in funding major media networks. Every year.
I believe it.
Why would they have a report about, they might tell you about the Johnson & Johnson, and I saw it at the bottom of the little ticker. They didn't have a big feature on it. They didn't talk much about it. It's here today, gone today.
Yeah.
But they'll keep hammering you away with all the fear and all the other problems, but they're not going to mess with their money.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, right now you even have where the celebrities will give away millions of $1 million worth of therapy with some of these apps, these mental health apps. Well, first of all, they're not giving it away. They're getting paid a fortune. Okay. And then all they're doing, and then you're looking at it and you're like, was that really like the best type of approach, is like people sitting at home talking to a therapist? Like, I understand get help, and help comes in all sorts of different types of way. I think it's just, you know, like when you're in it and you see what's going on, or like you're in it and you're like I was going to ask you, because I know in California now all public schools they're supplying food. Have you seen that?
I have not. No.
So in California now, all public schools, they're providing food. It's mandatory. But I was just curious what you thought about it, because I was like, well, what are they supplying?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like, what are they?
Yeah.
Because
they could just be feeding the problem.
It could be an opportunity, right?
Yeah, of
if
course.
there was some
just
insight.
a modicum of health coming behind it. But I was on the free lunch program, and it's much the same. You get your little single serving size cereal bowl.
Yeah.
You know, you get a juice, and you get yourself a milk, and you have at it. You know, you fuel yourself or anti-fuel yourself to start the day. You know, and on another day we might get, packaged donuts or, things of that nature, but not real food. This is not real food that they're providing for these children. But we can change that.
We can change it.
That's accessible. It's possible. And so for me, I'm passionate and that there's the obstacle there. But with work like yours, it really is a format because I also see the opportunity in it.
Yeah, there is.
And we've got to focus on that.
Yeah, because we can get stuck in the problem or we can get stuck in the solution. And when we get stuck in the problem, we don't feel good. We get frustrated. When we see there's an opportunity to get in it, then we feel better. That's why I was like, oh, you should see if you could work with what they're supplying in the schools. That could be really helpful.
Low key, I am.
You are?
There's some little stuff going on behind the scenes,
Okay.
But this is part of the process. I wanted to influence policy change, which there's some really cool stuff going on with some of the folks that have been reaching out in policy and government. But the nature of that is by me saying, you know what, I don't even care if you don't do this. Because for a long time I was approaching that, like trying to get in position to do that. But I'm just of the mind that we can do it ourselves.
Right.
At the end of the day, when it really boils down to it, we can do it ourselves. We don't have to wait around for whoever fill in the blank to do it.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about this because getting to that place where we can take action and make big change.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do is we get distracted. We use distractions. And you mentioned earlier of your own experience with drugs and alcohol and working with so many people and just having a major impact with that. That's one method of distraction from our potential.
Yeah, and I've worked with it all. I mean, the last, I would say 7, even though I own a center, my primary work has been with people who are successful out there, creating a lot of magic, and they're on they're on fire, right? But they still have aspects of their life that are distractions or that are weighing them down.
Social media is another big distraction today.
It is.
So how do we manage some of this stuff? Like, why do we do that? Why do we use these things when we know we should be, quote, should be taking action to create the life that we want, that we say we want? Why do we get distracted?
Well, I mean, I think all distraction is not bad, right? So sometimes whether you believe in God or universe, like it could be something's trying to creep in that's really helpful, right? So sometimes that's helpful. We do know that people can't really do two things at once. A lot of people think that they can listen while they're typing, while they're your brain doesn't have that ability really. It does go down a little bit. So the focus does go away. But I think it's the level of distraction that we have our control over. So, whether we're watching movies all day or whether we're going on social media or whether we're making decisions that have enough of a significant impact that it could change our lives. I mean, the two motivators for us to change any behavior, big motivators, are consequences if we don't change it. Sometimes the consequences aren't that big of a deal. The distraction is not that bad. It's yeah, okay, we may not be able to do this in our business, but whatever, it's not that serious. Or it could be that oh, this is going to be detrimental, right? So the level of focus depends. So the one is consequences. Sometimes there aren't big consequences. Social media is so nebulous. It's hard to tell what the consequence is. Oh, I'm going on social media and looking at all these pages. Well, what's the consequence? Well, every time you're digesting information, you have to ask yourself, did I feel smarter after? Do I feel happier? Did it satisfy anything in me? Because it's no different than playing a video game then. I mean, I can say I play Magic the Gathering, which is like a card game. I literally enter tournaments and stuff.
Oh, you're a big nerd.
Yeah,
big nerd energy over here.
But I do it to debrief. I do it to
love it.
meditative almost, right? And I have done it at times when I want to escape. I'll play on my computer and I'm probably playing some 12-year-old in Japan or something, right? Because their cards are in Japanese. Yeah. But I think there's levels to which we get consequences based upon our decisions, and the other is pain. So the second reason why we change is pain. We get sick and tired of being sick and tired. We don't like how we feel. We don't like how that's making me feel. To be honest, I saw the movie Fast and Furious 9 and I was going through pain. I mean, that was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. I thought it was like, by the end of it, I literally wanted to leave so bad, but I was on a date and I couldn't leave. It was so bad, like so bad.
That's a big statement. I haven't seen it yet, but
I honestly, I would have rather cleaned my closet. Okay. But by the way, it's not that severe. I don't go and see movies all the time to have this reaction. But if you're doing a behavior that doesn't bring you joy, and I'm not discrediting all the Fast and Furious, creations. I know people put a lot of effort in. I know it's a lot of energy. I know it's grossly successful. But I think it's figuring out what are those things that are distracting us and not being a perfectionist. It's all good. Sometimes people they'll bring up quotes. They'll bring up quotes about Steve Jobs did this, right? Why don't you ask his kid how he was as a dad? Because I've read certain things, but everyone wants to talk about Steve Jobs is this or that. Well, why don't we talk about what's more important? How did you impact the relationships in your life? And sometimes we miss the mark in terms of what are our priorities? It's more important to show up for your kids or those people you love than it is to make another $1 million. Because you get to have an impact on people that love you. And there's no better feeling than love. So, again, I don't know his son. I'm just saying that's what I read. It could be totally inaccurate. But I do think it's a matter of focusing on what is important and making sure that aspect of your life is fulfilled.
This is so good. Mike, I've got one more question for you. How do we deal with disappointment? How do we deal with when these situations have taken place and we feel like maybe we've done something wrong, we've struggled to make this particular change, and we are struggling to just come to terms with things, and we're just disappointed in ourselves?
We do. The number one thing is we don't do it alone. And that for some people, unfortunately, they've been taught you got to do it alone. Anyone who grows up in a traumatic household with an abusive parent or abusive situation has a very hard time asking for help because their caregiver growing up was not providing that help. It wasn't safe. And so for some people, they don't want to ask for help, or they feel like if they ask for help, they're going to owe someone, or they create a story. And we're all here on this planet trying to figure this thing out together. And it's, when I say asking for help, it's having coffee with someone who you admire and being like, how did you do that? Or how did you keep yourself from not being stressed? People like to share, Dr. Phil, and I'm on, Dr. Phil quite a bit, and I ask him a ton of questions because he's got a lot of wisdom. He is a mentor of mine, but I wasn't saying, hey, could you be my mentor? I just literally am how'd you do that? How do you do that? How do you deal with people being mean towards you? How do you deal with someone lying about you? How do you do? And I think it's disappointment. And a lot of people will do this through a divorce. They won't ask for help and they suffer a lot. And help doesn't mean going to therapy. Help is free. Help can be very free. And we all have people in our tribe or life. We all have those people that we haven't even seen in a year or 2 years, but we always have that vibe with them. And we always know that we can just be real with them and talk. And it's literally getting the words out and getting vulnerable with another person. And that starts to get the ball moving, because when we feel really disappointed, which is an emotion, and we of course can experience it, but it's also if it starts to affect our lives, we need help. I think help has this weird connotation, it's a bad thing. A lot of people believe, you don't ask for help. I got that. Well, okay, but you're going to suffer more. For me, I'm asking everyone for help. I'm asking everyone around me for help, So that would be my suggestion.
That's perfect. That was absolutely gold. Mike, thank you so much for hanging out
Thank
with us
you,
today.
Shawn.
This has been fun. Can you let everybody know where they can connect with you, get more from Coach Mike, and also
Yes.
where can they pick up your books?
Sure. So it's Coach Mike Bear on all social platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. And then, easiest way is Amazon to get One Decision or Best Self. And then if that's it really. I mean, I mean, if someone's really struggling in your life, you could call us at CAS Centers. We give free assessments. We could refer out to your area. We have some coaching programs, but I'm just grateful to be here with you, and this is an honor to be here. So thanks for having me, man.
Oh, thank you. Like, I've been diving into your world so much the past couple of weeks, and the great thing about you is you make these things palatable, you make it fun. And also, I love, again, I want to reiterate this, even in your books, you made it so actionable, which is not common.
Thanks.
And so I can see, and also just knowing the people that you've worked with and some of the people that you work with and had an impact on, they absolutely love you. You're the walking, talking example of it. And I just appreciate you so much for being here.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here to optimize your mindset.
Most people suffer from an attention deficit disorder and an intention deficit disorder. So their mind is all over the place. Their mind has been hijacked by worry, fear, anxiety,